you don't come play with us, then we will kill you.
Welcome back to season 3 of the Dudes of the Dead podcast. If you missed season 1 or season 2, including our top 10s of 2021 and 2022, you can find all of our previous episodes on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and Google. I'm Leatherface Lee.
And I'm Maniac Mike. This season, we've added an email for the show, dudesofthedead@gmail.com. Feel free to email us your thoughts on the films we discuss, and we're also asking for listener requests for season 4. So email us a film if you'd like us to review it in season 4, whether it's a personal favorite, a controversial film, or a hidden gem starring Nicolas Cage.
We can't wait for you to listen to season 3, including some appearances from friends of the pod, as well as some bonus episodes. We're also on YouTube at Dudes of the Dead podcast.
This season, we're excited to review some standouts from 2022, some older classics, and as well as some new films from 2023. We'd also greatly appreciate if you'd be willing to leave us a rating and a review. Thanks for joining us again, and
We'll see you in the aisles.
All right, hello, listeners. We have a special treat for you today. This is another bonus episode this season, and this is for Evil Dead Rise. And not only is this a special bonus episode, but we're doing a new method or new format for this episode, and this is our impromptu review of Evil Dead Rise. So Leah and I just saw this at the theater. We literally did not talk about the film at all. We drove straight to our studio.
In separate cars just to keep it,
Yeah, in separate cars. So we have not shared any opinions on this. We just saw it in our typical episodes. We normally make notes and do some research. But in this case, you're just getting our raw thoughts and opinions based on our viewing of the film. So hopefully you enjoy this impromptu review. We are going to keep this spoiler free until the end, and then we'll do some spoilers as per usual. So
we can try
if you've not seen the film and you just want to know what we think, then you can get that out of this episode. But if you've seen the film and you want to hear our more in-depth thoughts with some spoilers, then stick around until afterwards. All right, so the synopsis for Evil Dead Rise is a twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. This has a 7.3 on Internet Movie Database and 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. Ooh. Yeah, pretty high. And I believe the audience score was 80%.
Okay.
So yeah, good. Pretty close.
What's up, sis?
I had the most beautiful dream.
It was the perfect day. And all I could think about was how much I wanted to cut you all open and then climb inside your bodies so that we could stay one happy family.
This was directed by Lee Cronin, who directed, I found out today, the Irish film The Hole in the Ground.
Oh, that was good.
That was good. Yeah. I seem to recall you recommended that to me. We both watched that one and liked that.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that he directed this film. And last season, we did an Evil Dead versus episode where we looked at the original Evil Dead versus the 2013 remake.
Yeah.
And I believe we both thought the 2013 remake just barely edged out the original. That was
for
both
me,
of our favorites.
Yeah, for me it did for sure, yeah.
Right. So just quickly before we start, how would you describe your relationship with the Evil Dead franchise overall for those who maybe didn't listen to last season?
I just trying to remember. I'm pretty sure, I would have seen the original first and then came to the remake. And I was pleasantly surprised by the remake. Like it definitely edged out the original for me because it hung on to the edginess of the original, but added enough new elements that I was like, and of course the production value from whenever it was 84 to 2013 was just crazy. Or maybe it was not later than that, 91 or whatever was the original Evil Dead. Anyway, I like the remake better. I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fan, but of the follow-up films, but I definitely like the two, the original and the remake. And this one for me did not disappoint in some ways. So I would say it was a good follow-up for me.
This one we watched tonight.
Yeah, the one we just saw.
Right.
We just ran from the theater to come and record this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think either of us are Evil Dead super fans.
No.
I know there are definitely some passionate Evil Dead super fans, but I think I like all the films.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Maybe I feel a tiny bit disappointed but maybe my expectations were high. What were your expectations going into this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can feel where you're coming from on that one because it's so hyped right now.
And I tried, like, I didn't watch a trailer.
Yeah.
I tried not to watch any reviews, but just seeing peripheral
Totally.
buzz seemed very positive.
Yeah.
So I kind of went in, even though I tried not to have expectations. I think my expectations were that this was, based on the ratings and stuff, very good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it for the most part lived up to that. I mean, there were definitely some things where I felt that it had followed up on the original. Like there's some POV stuff that was in the originals that I thought they kind of paid homage to in this one. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it feels like an Evil Dead film for sure. Like I
100%.
think that's where everyone can rest easy, is that no doubt you very quickly realize that this is an Evil Dead film and has all the kind of things you would expect in an
absolutely.
Evil Dead film.
Mom?
Mommy's with the maggots now.
What will be.
If you were not really jazzed about the original or the remake, you could probably give this a pass because it's like it's that to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were a fan or if you're a super fan, it's like you'll get something out of this one for sure. I mean, to me, it's always funny, you know, like even in the subsequent films or in the remake, it's like, do they never learn their lesson? I mean, there's a book made out of human flesh.
Yeah.
Like maybe you shouldn't open it. This is going to be hard to discuss without spoilers. I think you said it really well though, that it is an Evil Dead film.
Yes.
And if that's what you're coming in expecting, that's exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think this isn't spoilers, but it's got all the bodily fluids.
Totally.
It's got lots of blood. It has pretty cringy gore.
Yeah.
It's got, chainsaws and shotguns and really malevolent, evil, kind of comedic, borders the line. Like there's
Not as much as the first two. Well, as the first one in particular.
it kind of walks that line. Like it was
Yeah.
interesting being in the theater. A lot of almost nervous laughter or
Yes.
uncomfortable
Yeah,
laughter.
yeah,
Like
for
it kind of
sure.
walks that line really well. I think that's sort of a defining characteristic of the Evil Dead films.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a few moments certainly with the central character.
Yeah.
Where there's definitely moments of black humor in there for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it feels like an Evil Dead film, but maybe that's where my disappointment comes from, and is that it just kind of did everything I expected it to
Right.
do, but
It
maybe
didn't
didn't do
add-
anything that different.
Yeah.
It just played it very safe, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I mean, it's a banger start of the film. And then it was like, then it kind of settles down into, some backstory and whatever. And then it ramps up fairly steadily through the rest of the film. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's a twinge of disappointment for me because I kind of hoped for a little bit more, but it was entertaining and it was definitely fun to see in a theater. Like, I don't know how you felt because I know you're sensitive to this. I felt the crowd was good.
For sure.
There was, I mean, like you say, there was some nervous laughter and there was, I think, some like people kind of reacting to what they were seeing, but I didn't find that there were any, real jerks in the crowd or anything.
No, and I think an Evil Dead film lends itself a bit better to a theater
Yes.
experience because it's okay to like
Totally.
make noise and laugh, and whereas other moods are very predicated on like having the
Yeah.
mood and the tension.
Yeah.
And so if they're trying to build tension and you have a bunch of drunk teenage girls next to you giggling, it really ruins it.
Not that that's ever happened to you, but if it
No.
were to happen,
Never. But in Evil Dead, it's kind of like a fun experience.
Totally.
Everyone's like laughing and
Yeah.
kind of getting into it, which
yeah, I think if this was like, maybe was it one of the Insidious films that we had gone to see?
I
that
think
was
so.
If you've got a film, like you say,
Conjuring.
that relies really heavily on atmosphere and those moments of silence, versus action.
Yeah.
This one is like pretty balls to the wall the whole time. So you can kind of get away with a little bit of nervous, laughter or a little bit of commentary or whatever. And it doesn't take away from your experience, I don't think.
Yeah. So what would stand out to you? What are your kind of favorite things without spoiling, but just what did you like?
Yeah, like I say, great start to the film. Like that really sets the scene for you. And just, it was, I didn't time it, but like maybe it was 8 or 10 minutes long. And it just like brought you right back into the Evil Dead, like world right away, which was really great. And there was some like little fun lines, little bits of humor in there as well. You and I were both trying to figure out for sure I've seen the lead female, and not having done any research or anything, I don't know where she's from, but it was so annoying to like, where is she from? Where is she from? And I'll probably figure it out at some point. Yeah. I mean, it was a fun romp. It was definitely a good theater film. It would be less enjoyable for me, I think, to see at home. I liked what they did with the family experience. So that was an interesting thing that they tried to do with that. I wasn't really sure where they were going with the sister in the film, because to me, it seemed completely incidental what she did.
Yeah.
For like, it was just completely off the mark for me. It's like, who cares? Just bring her into the story. We didn't need to see the beginnings of her story and then come in to visit her sister.
See, I wonder if that's one of my gripes. So you liked the intro, how they jump right in. And I almost found that a bit jarring. Like, they get right into it.
Right into it, yeah.
And I was almost caught off guard by that. I kind of like the slower build. And so something about that just threw me a little bit, even though it was kind of fun. But normally I kind of like to...
Yeah, build. I see that. Yeah.
And then even when we get to the main plot line, I felt like perhaps they ramped up too quickly. I think they could have spent a bit more time on character development. I think,
yeah,
like you're saying, like they didn't do much with their relationship. I barely felt like there was much of a relationship there between the two sisters or even the family, because there's quite a few characters who we were with for this film. And I felt like all of them were very underdeveloped. So I feel like some of the things that happened later in the movie would have paid off more had they taken a bit more time. Maybe cut out that second storyline and just invest more in the main storyline would be one of my main complaints.
So not have the intro bit?
Not have the bookends, yeah. And I think we can talk about that a bit more in the spoilers, but I'm not sure that was really worth it.
I mean, I think one of the comments I made to you coming out of the film was, did I miss something from the intro to the main storyline? Like they seemed disconnected. I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the connection. Like are they supposed to be related, or I didn't seem like there was any connection. It was
I wondered if they were trying to do like a Annabelle kind of thing, at the beginning of the Conjuring films, they have that little Annabelle storyline. It almost felt like they were trying to do something like that.
Yeah, I guess.
Or maybe just get the audience attention really quickly and have an excuse to do that.
There was no real development of family or story or anything. And then it's just like, wham, this all of a sudden, starts. So pacing might have been an issue in this one. And it's funny because I often complain about runtime, but I wonder, even if they'd given themselves another 10 or 15 minutes and kind of developed a few of the characters, but done some judicious cutting of things we didn't really need to see, like the sisters scenario, could they have worked that in a different way than having that separate scene when we see her? I didn't think that was necessary. So could they have brought in her situation later when she talks to her sister or something in a different way, and maybe even cut out that, like if they'd cut that sister scene and they'd cut the intro scene, they would have had a good 15, 20 minutes to build story before they get into the craziness of the, movie.
Yeah.
But, I mean, not having done any reading or listened to any interviews of directors or anything else, I mean, I think I noticed it was executive produced by Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, which is great. I just wonder if the director, if that was the intent, is like, let's just have a crazy balls to the wall Evil Dead movie.
Yeah. And I think it's a crowd pleaser. Like, I think this is a fun film to go see in the theater.
Yeah.
I think if you like Evil Dead, it has enough that DNA that you'll enjoy it. But I don't know if I'll be curious to see. For me, this wasn't like an X or like some of the higher profile films from last year. I don't know if this will make like top 10 lists or be like the best film of the year. It's kind of like Cotton Candy. It's a fun,
for sure,
fluffy, like it gives you what you want as a horror fan, but it's not super deep.
I've gone back and rewatched the 2013 one 3, 4, maybe 5 times. That one really sits well with me. And I think there's just some really good development. I really like what they do. This one, I can't see myself, like maybe in a few years, I might go back and rewatch it for fun, but I can't see myself really coming back to this one.
Yeah. Like it's well done, but it seems like they sat around a table with their Evil Dead checklist and just thought, check. It's well executed.
Totally. And the effects are pretty good.
Totally.
I mean, they did like the
performances were good.
Yeah. I don't think they cheaped out on the effects. Like I think, visually it was over the top, but it was well done.
And Elle, the mother, Alyssa Sutherland, I thought she was the best.
Yeah.
Especially just her look. It's hard for me to say her performance was good, but just I feel like she really has a striking look to her, and
Yeah.
she's pretty terrifying, kind of creepy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing I think that also didn't work for me, I really associate Evil Dead with like a cabin in the woods. And
Mm.
something about the apartment building setting, I don't think that's a spoiler. I think in the trailers you see that pretty clearly.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't really like the apartment as a setting. I think that was one thing that also, like the beginning setting to me, I was like, oh, this looks really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
They aesthetically, the way they frame it, I think was really like different. And I was excited for that. I get that maybe you can't do every Evil Dead film in a cabin in the woods,
Yeah.
but the apartment building to me just was pretty ho-hum as a setting.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Like, I think they tried to create or recreate the same atmosphere with different scenarios that they pulled off. Like, they're isolated, this and that, but it doesn't come off the same way because you just think, okay, well, but you're in the middle of a city in an apartment
Exactly.
building. Like, you're not in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
Like in the
that's-
cab. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just that's more terrifying. Like you're in the boonies somewhere and these terrible things are happening and like there's nobody to turn to.
Yeah.
If you're thinking, you're wondering to yourself, couldn't they do this or couldn't they do this or why didn't they do that or like there's all those scenarios instead of okay, well the elevator doesn't work, I guess we're stuck. Like it was a fun theater experience.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be worthy of your time, I don't think, going back.
I also thought the setup was a bit lazy, maybe, or just the way how they go about getting into this predicament and all the events that happen to make it
Yeah.
come together. I thought was just kind of lame. Like I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
But we can get into more details on that in the spoiler section. We don't want to ruin that for anyone. Really good gore, though. I mean, that's the highlight.
For sure. If you can see it when it's in theaters or get a chance to see it on a big screen, I think that's going to be an experience that pays off for this kind of movie.
So it sounds like we are both recommending this film.
Yeah, I think we're both recommending this, particularly as a theater experience.
Yeah, and even if you've never seen an Evil Dead film before, I think you can still go into this and have a really fun
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
And I would say go with a group of people. Like I think the more the merrier.
Yeah,
probably
I
for
think
this
that would
kind
be
of
fun. Yeah, get
Yeah.
your popcorn and have some fun for sure. So spoilers.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
I didn't squirm as hard in this one, I don't think, as the 2013.
No.
But which scenes
Ooh.
stand out to you in terms of like the gore? Did anything make you squirm?
To be honest, I think the shocker of the scalping at the
At the
beginning was
beginning?
just like, whoa.
That did come out of nowhere.
But there was no, I'm just trying to think, as really there wasn't much that made me.
The cheese grater on the leg.
Okay, yeah, sorry, that was the one. Yeah,
That one I
yeah.
was like, oh, that made me
Yeah.
kind of uncomfortable. I think that was something that really made me cringe. I think for some people when she's chewing on the wine glass and kind of swallowing, but I thought that'd actually be worse.
Mhm.
I don't think they milked that one as much as they could have.
No. Yeah, you're right. The cheese grater one's probably the one. And there was like an audible gasp it was like everybody was like, oh,
Yeah.
Particularly because if you've ever done that, like and scraped your finger on a cheese grater or whatever, and if you just think, oh my God, if I was taking that to my leg and like, oh, to me, it was cartoon violence.
Totally.
For the most part, because it's so
And Evil
over the
Dead always
top.
has been, I think.
Yeah, but there were some scenes in the 2013 remake that were just really, and this is a bad pun, but really got under my skin. Like they were just like, oh, that
I would agree,
you could
same.
feel it, right? And although I didn't find those cartoonish. I found those really uncomfortable. This one, it was like, okay, that's just craziness.
Yeah, this maybe harkens back a bit more to the original Evil Deads in terms of what it's doing with the violence, and especially really like tripling down on
Yeah.
a lot of bodily fluids and things shooting out of people's mouths and eyes and orifices. And
Yeah.
like this one's really goopy.
I found it didn't end up panning out. Maybe the only other cringy scene for me was the elevator scene where the main character's attacked, and I was expecting.
I was thinking the same
and
thing as you.
I was expecting, if you've seen the Evil Dead movies, there's the famous like root rape scene. And I was expecting something similar, but within an apartment
With
building.
elevator cables?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
with an electrical cable or something. And thankfully they didn't do that. But what they did do was have this woman hanging almost in a crucified position and then breaking her limbs. And it was just like, whoa.
And it's so meta, I think, that our reaction in that we were sitting there thinking they might
Yes.
do that. I think they almost made it so reminiscent to the Roots
Absolutely.
that they made the audience think, oh, are they going to go there? And they didn't. But I think it almost planted that idea in your mind, because I think you and I were both saying there, be like, oh, are they going to go there?
I think it definitely was premeditated that's what because they did just like in the original with the and the remake with the roots wrapping around the arms and the legs. They did the same thing with the elevator cables. And for sure, if you've seen the films, you're going, oh no, they're going to go there, and they don't.
Yeah.
But I think that sets up this expectation in you and raises the tension for sure. And that was a perfect example of, I think, a really good execution of raising the tension without having to go to the, crazy nth degree.
Yeah.
Whereas in other parts of the film, I just think they went way over the top. Do you know if this was meant to be in 3D?
I don't know.
Because the reason I ask is there's only one scene that I wondered, oh, wow, that seems, when
with the eyeball?
Yeah, with the eyeball thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I wonder, because actually, it's funny. This is totally irrelevant to this film, but when I went to see Scream 6 a few weeks ago, we started, my wife and I went to see this, and we started the film, and I'm like, is this meant to be in 3D?
Was it?
You know how they get that, you get that when you're not having your 3D glasses on, you have that weird double vision thing.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, she had just gone to get her eyes tested and she had to get new glasses anyway. And she said, no, I don't think it's in 3D. And I'm like, I'm 100% sure it's in 3D. And sure enough, I turned around and everybody's wearing 3D glasses. So I had to go out in the lobby and get the glasses. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, anyway, all of that to say, this made me wonder if there were elements of sort of 3D in this. But I really like, you mentioned this before the spoiler section, the makeup and the effects on the main actress were really creepy.
Mhm.
And I mean, in general, I think they did a really good job. Like whether it's CG or practical, I'm sure it's a mix. It's getting to the point now where it's just so good.
Yeah. The blood or whatever the liquid dropping out of that
Absolutely.
girl's
Yeah.
eyes and her nose. Like, I thought that was sort of gripping as well.
Yeah. And I was sitting there, thinking about, okay, how would are they doing that practically? Cause you're not seeing, cause it's literally coming out of the corner of her eye and her nostrils. It's like, okay, well, maybe the nostril thing they could do with tubes, but where would the tubes be coming from? Cause it's not like, like a squib or whatever underneath fabric. It's like, where would they put that in her nose and in her eyes? But
yeah, it seemed more like CG, I think, but really good.
Yeah, really good. Like there was no telltale signs that was CG.
Mm-hmm. I love the intro too. The very beginning where you have the POV cam.
Yes.
And then it's actually like a drone flying.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very clever because even right off the bat, like, hey, it feels like Evil Dead. We got
Absolutely.
our POV and then the little twist with the drone. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, that was really good. Like, I mean, like I say, it was a really banger start because they start with that just like in the original, particularly where you've got those POV shots where it's following the car and it's going through the woods. And this was exactly the same, but with the drone. So it was it really pulls you in to that world. And then there was a little bit of comedy to release the tension with a, dickish kind of guy. And then the scalping thing happens and just like, holy, but then it's almost like an axe comes down and it completely switches mood and switches. And that's what made me ask you the question about, did I miss something? Was there a connection between that opener and what happens later? But
not really, other than I think you were saying like it persists and it's still there.
Yeah.
But I think it was maybe more tonally just to get the audience attention perhaps.
Yeah.
Or paying homage to like Annabelle, like Conjuring or something, having that bookend thing. But I think I would have preferred to not have that ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fun like lapel grabber, but then it sets you up so that it ramps you up and then it brings you back down into, I think, does it go directly into the sister scene after that? I think
she's in the club taking the pregnancy test.
Yeah. And it's like, that's what I said earlier before the spoiler section. Like, to me, that was a waste of time. Like, she's a guitar tech. She's in this club or whatever. And this guy's banging on the door and asking about a Stratocaster or what. It's like, that was completely unnecessary. It made no difference later on in the film what she was doing. The pregnancy thing, yes.
And even the pregnancy thing, I don't feel like they did a whole lot with. Like, there's one little scene, but
it ties into the idea of her maternal instincts and she's protecting the kids. And I feel like it's her connection to her sister. And later on in the film, they throw out some things about, particularly towards the very end, about her mom. Like, you're going to be a shitty mom, just like our mom was. So there's definitely maternal connections there. But I think that could have been established with better writing. Like, I think your point earlier is well taken, that it was just kind of lazy how they did. Like, because you didn't need any of those things, you could have written better scenes later and just introduced a family kind of setting and established the characters and given them a little bit more background, a little bit more meat.
Yeah. And there's one line like, oh yeah, this building used to be a bank.
Yeah.
And then there's an earthquake, which makes a little hole in the ground.
Yeah.
And they go down, and then in the middle of a bank, I guess, there's all these crosses hanging, and this, like, it just, I didn't appreciate the setup. It just seems super lazy to me.
No, I agree. And I mean, you know, this is nitpicky and it's silly to be kind of picking these things apart, but even as a horror, or maybe because I'm a horror fan, if the ground opened up and I went into the hole and I saw this kind of crate casket looking thing with hundreds of crosses hanging over it, and they even had like a life size, you know, sort of a crucifixion thing that almost falls on one of the characters. I'm not going to pick my way through that and kind of peer at what's in. I'm just going to assume that that's something that shouldn't be brought out into the daylight.
Yeah, and he gets swarmed by cockroaches and it hangs around. And like the Eminem DJ kid, I don't think he's going to be drawn to an old dusty tome book. Like, I just didn't buy that part, but it is what it is. I guess they have to have it in there.
And again, I think it was like sort of lazy writing too. Like, the family dynamics are a bit weird. Like, I could see the connection between the two sisters, and that more or less worked for me. Like, it seemed like there was a good bond. What happens later in the film where the brother becomes, you know, sort of protective of his sister or whatever, I didn't get a vibe for that earlier in the film. So it was just like, okay, well, I guess that's what he does.
And they seem like good actors, and I think they could have had better performances. You've done more with them, but I felt all the family bit was just really underdeveloped. Yeah. So I would have preferred either hold off a little bit more on the horror stuff or make it a little bit longer. But I feel like the film suffered a bit because of how underdeveloped those family members were. The film, or the scene at the beginning with the girl in the bed, though, I thought that was actually one of the creepiest scenes when she's reciting Wuthering Heights and she flops off the bed. Like, to me, that was one of the most effective sequences. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because even though I think they could have, and I think I mentioned in the first part, like, if they were going to edit and do some things differently, they could have cut that whole intro scene. But those were some of the tensest moments in the film, were right in that first scene.
Mm-hmm. And that not so subtle allusion to The Shining. Did you pick up on that?
Oh my gosh.
Like, even when they were in the elevator and blood started coming up, like, are they going to do this at the end?
Yeah.
And they almost framed the shot the same way.
Absolutely.
Door opens and all the blood comes out with it. That was kind of cool, I guess. Makes me wonder, are there other references to other classic horror films in there? I wasn't paying attention until that point.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be something to go back and, like, that would be a fun thing to go have a look for, is to see if there's Easter eggs in there relating to other films. I mean, there's definitely nods to the franchise and things that happen in the franchise.
And in the car park, always makes me think of Drag Me to Hell, and that's Sam Raimi as well.
Yeah,
I thought maybe like one of them would pop up in the backseat or something, because that was very
with the old woman.
Yeah, I was waiting for that because it kind of was reminiscent of Drag Me to Hell.
It was a fun film to see in the theater, but I think it definitely suffered a little bit from the overhype, and that's unfortunate because I think, you know, you don't ever want to walk away disappointed, but that's kind of how it's like.
Took me a bit to adjust to the sort of the family and their kind of like grungy, dysfunctional kind of style. Like, normally in horror films with these things, you have like the very idyllic and the nuclear family, and they're all happy and innocent. And like, this family was really different, which I thought was good, but I think they just needed more time. Like, I wasn't attached to them yet. I just thought, like, these are kind of dysfunctional, weird characters.
Yeah, and they just threw stuff in, like the fact that they
weren't likable yet. They were bickering with each other and fighting. And
they're supposed to be leaving this derelict building in a month, but their apartment is just like jam-packed with stuff. Like, they haven't done any packing. There's books and pictures and all, and you're just thinking, okay, when's this going to happen? If you're supposed to be leaving, shouldn't you be getting some of this stuff out of the house?
Yeah.
And it was a huge place for, like, for an
It's a big
apartment.
apartment.
It was a big apartment. Yeah, there was just a bunch of stuff that didn't really kind of fit together. And maybe that's a bit of what I'm feeling is,
Yeah, you really have to just go into this and be like, I just want to have fun, not overthink it, enjoy
Yeah.
the gore and be done. But I think even the gore, because the 2013 really turned it up to 11, I think I had pretty heightened expectations for how uncomfortable the gore would make me feel. Or like they just keep raising the bar, like after watching Terrifier 2 and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So maybe, I mean, it's definitely gross at times, but it didn't reach those kind of levels.
I think that's a great example that you bring up with Terrifier, because we talked about this, I think, when we talked about Terrifier. That one is over the top violence,
Mhm.
but for me, it was very uncomfortable violence. This was cartoonish to
Yes.
me. Like it's also over the top, and you feel like, you're drenched in blood at the end of it, but I never felt like it was real violence.
No.
Whereas in Terrifier, it's actually terrifying because you got this like psychopath just playing with somebody, cutting them, and doing like that was a horrible scene.
But don't you think the 2013 Evil Dead pushes
Yes.
more in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this almost pushed more in the opposite direction,
Yeah.
even though it's still over the top. But yeah, a bit more cartoony is maybe a good way to put it.
I have to say though, I was pleasantly surprised is not the best word, but I liked what they did with almost a thing.
The way they all amalgamated
yeah.
together, and
And that was one of the pictures in the Book of the Dead. And I really liked how they did that, is like, because I was trying to figure out what are they doing when the mother character lost her limbs
Mhm.
in the hallway. And then when they came down into the car park, it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of like, I thought that was kind of a cool extension of that world.
yeah, maybe I found that a bit over the top, where I just started like, okay, this is just getting
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
But I think that's going to be like personal taste.
Yeah.
One thing that I wasn't sure how it was going to go, that you really only had the family at the beginning. So I was trying to envision, like, are they going to do all these horrific things? Because like the 2013, you
Yeah.
have all these like young adults, so you kind of expect that they're going to get massacred. But you've got essentially kids here. So I'm like, are they going to go there with the kids? And they kind of do. And I was actually a bit pleasantly surprised / shocked. Like that's a sense of horror that you wouldn't get in the other ones, is you have like quite young kids having pretty horrible things happen to them.
Anyway, it's a fun romp, and maybe that's a future episode where we could actually watch original, remake, and this one and kind of see how they tie together. That would be a long watch. From what I remember, anyway, I would still say that the 2013 remake is still my favorite of the franchise. I think did you lean a little bit, because I think you liked the original because it was one of your kind of seminal films.
Yeah,
for horror
definitely.
films.
Yeah, I do. But I love the 2013 one. Like, I would go back to the originals. I'd go back to the 2013. I don't think I'd really go back to this one,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed it. And I think it's a fun romp.
Yeah.
It's worth seeing in the theater. Worth checking out. Yeah. So anyways, thank you for listening to this impromptu review bonus episode, and we'll see you in the aisles. Thanks so much for listening to Dudes of the Dead podcast, where Maniac Mike and Leatherface Lee break down their latest horror movie recommendations.
The show is researched, written, and hosted by Mike Vincent and Lee Neese. Produced and edited by Lee Neese. Special thanks to Aaron Jabs for the outro music. This has been a Neesely Done podcast production.